Good evening, everyone. Welcome to E-Bible Fellowship's Open Forum program tonight. We're going to open up the phone lines to take your call, and each listener is invited to give us a call. Now, I'd like to make an announcement about calling in, and we're going to try and combine the FCC with Zoom on Monday, not tonight, but Lord willing, on Monday during this time, the FCC free conference call will be back in action, and we'll try to take questions that way, as well as over Zoom in the ways that we've been doing with the video Zoom and the audio Zoom with the toll-free number. Now, the good thing about the free conference call is that someone can just go there to listen. They can sit and listen to the whole hour of the program, and we only pay one small fee once a month. I think it's $5.95. And so if anybody just wants to call in to listen, although there's other ways you can listen, you don't have to do that. But if you want to call in to listen, then use the free conference call, and you know, it's a fairly insignificant charge once a month, and please do not use the toll-free number. We want to use the toll-free number for people who will call in to ask a question, and especially people from overseas, international. So that will start Monday, Lord willing. And we'll have then 3 different ways of calling it. But now at this time, we're going to begin our program, and we'll go to the first person on the phone tonight. Welcome to our question and answer program. Please go ahead with your call.
Hi, Chris, can you please read James chapter 2, verse 19?
Okay, James 2:19. Thou believest that there is one God, thou doest well, the devils also believe and tremble.
No, I know that the devils believe that Christ is Christ because they spoke to him also in Matthew, or one of those books, Matthew or John. But I wanted to say that tremble. What does God mean when He say the devils also tremble? I know they know who He is. I know, of course, they fear Him, in the sense of saying, like, as knowing that He's the Son of God, because they announced that you're the Son of God. What are you doing with us? What do you want with us now? Something like that in the Bible. But what does tremble mean? Because does that mean they fear Him? Because if they feared Him, that means they wouldn't have, when they first fell down with Satan from heaven, they wouldn't have done what they did. So I'm not thinking it's fear like we fear something.
Yeah. Well, we know the devils recognized Christ. They knew who He was. For example, on one occasion when they had infilled someone, they said to him, "Hast thou come to torment us before the time?" And then Christ would cast them out. And so there's different kinds of fear. Now, the child of God fears God. We fear the Lord. But the way we fear the Lord is we have just a strong desire to do His will, to keep His commandments. We're like a child that when we sin, we're like a child that has done wrong, and we know our loving Father is going to chasten us. That's the kind of fear we have for God, and so we want, for ultimately it becomes for love's sake to keep His commandments. We do not want His disapproval, His displeasure in any way. Well, that's not the type of fear that the sinner or these devils, and remember, they're fallen angels. Angels are spirit beings. So even after their fall, they were on, or they existed in a similar realm as God. God is a spirit, and angels were created ministering spirits. And so they continued to exist as spirits, only operating in this creation, in this world. And so they were fully aware of the existence of the Spirit God, and that Christ was this Spirit God. And so they had a slightly different perspective than mankind. When mankind sinned, God slew them in their spirit, so that man's spirit died, and it became much easier for man to start denying the existence of a spirit God. Actually, when you think of it, man is struck dead by God and His Spirit, and so he loses spiritual life, and so it's obvious. It's the obvious next step for man to then deny the existence of spirits, or the existence of the spiritual kingdom of God, heaven, to deny the existence of God Himself, and so forth, because he's dead in spirit. And so Satan and the fallen angels, they operated on a different level than man. They had more understanding than the ignorant men that they ruled over the course of history, for the most part. And so they continue to recognize the existence of God. And that's the point here. And it has to do with faith, in this passage where God is saying to professed Christians, or anyone who professes belief in God, okay, you say you have faith, but you need works to accompany your faith, or your faith is vain, it's dead. And so the example is pointed to of the devils. So God first says to the professed Christian, thou believest there is one God. You have faith, there is one God. Thou doest well. Okay, that's fine. That's a proper belief. The devils also believe and tremble. Why bring up the devils? Because it's the same situation. You see, the whole matter being discussed is that your faith, man, is of no power. It's a dead faith unless Christ has performed His atoning work on your behalf. It is faith with His work, and really it's His faith as well, that brings salvation. And so let's God is saying, let's look at an example. The devils believe, and we, like you said, we could go to various scriptures showing their recognition, their belief in Christ and God. and tremble. They have this certain fear of God because they again exist on a similar plateau or in the same realm of existence, the spiritual, and so they have a view of God that spiritually dead man lacks, and so it causes them to believe and tremble, but it doesn't do them any good, does it? That they believe. Their belief in God is of no importance or significance in any way. It doesn't save them. And everyone knows that. We all recognize that. We realize, well, they could believe all day. Satan could believe in God and profess his belief, or all the fallen angels can believe in Christ. And isn't that what the churches tell people? Believe, 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 and you'll be saved. Well, God's point is the devils believe, 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 and they're not saved. Why not? Why aren't the devils saved if they believe? Because they have belief, but what do they lack? The atoning work of Christ performed on their behalf. Jesus took on him the seed of Abraham. That is, he paid for the sins of men, certain men, the elect. He did not pay for the sins of any angel. So there's no work at all that they can point to and say, well, I believe and this is my work. No, they have belief alone. And so do about 2 billion professed Christians. They have an abundance of what comes out of the mouth. And they have intellectual assent, and yet not in their heart, because they lack the works that were finished from the foundation of the world, performed by Christ for certain individuals called the elect. And that's the Lord's point here. But thank you for calling and sharing. And let's now go to the next caller tonight. Welcome to E-Bible Fellowship's Open Forum program. Please go ahead with your call.
I don't have a verse, but I have a question. Maybe you can answer from the Bible. Is that all the events throughout history and circumstances, the events in our life, whether they're good or bad, throughout our lives, throughout history, is it fair to say that it all happens for the sake of God's elect? It's like it's all centered around God's elect, just them passing through this existence. So everything happens so that they get to heaven, or all the bad things and the good things, and that it's all done for the sake of the elect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, God created, the story, the biblical story of God's salvation program predates the creation of this world. It goes back into eternity past. As God tells us, he made choice. He selected those to save before the foundation of the world. And then we know Jesus bore their sins and died at the point of the foundation of the world, rose again, and then God created the world. So all of that which has to do with salvation was the works were finished regarding salvation. So God already has known from all eternity that he will create the world or mankind will fall into sin, and then history will unfold. And in the unfolding of history, God will work out the salvation of all those people that excuse me, that he had predestinated to obtain it. And that's what happened. And so God very patiently, long-sufferingly put up with the sins of the world. The world has, of course, its own perception, a very different focus. They think that it's all about them. It's all about their lives. It's all about what they can achieve and the things that they can accomplish within their lifetime. It's about the wonderful song they can sing, or the great movie they can act in, or the beautiful painting the artist can paint. And it's all about achievement and making a mark in history. And then, of course, every so many hundreds of years, all those things are completely wiped out. They're completely wiped out by wars and the ravages of time. And we don't remember those people anyway. No, that would be a testimony to the truthfulness of Solomon's declaration that vanity of vanities, all is vanity. But it's not about the world's goals and their attaining of them or failure to attain them, and the progress of mankind. That is, it is laughable, isn't it? See, there was a time from the end, maybe the last couple of 100 years, where with the so-called discovery of the theory of evolution, and that man thought he was progressing, getting better, evolving into a higher form of being, into a higher form of moral being as well. And yet the events of the time of the end have made that a ridiculous thought. No, man is not progressing. He's not evolving into a higher form of being. He is, if anything, degenerating into the beastly natural fallen condition of his heart. That is coming to the surface. It is showing itself more and more at this time of the end, and we're getting a very good look at what man is in his sinful condition. But anyway, it would be truly hopeless, and just it would be a terrible thing if life was about the pursuits of the people of the world. It would be emptiness and vanity, and no wonder so many people in the world they lose hope, and so they try to find escape in drinking or in drugs or in anything at all, just to sort of numb themselves from the daily grind of living in this world, and just nothing seems to make any sense or have any purpose or meaning. Well, it is a fact. It's a fact in their case. If they don't have Christ, if they're not living for God, they are living meaningless lives. Ultimately, it's a hard thing to say, but it is what the Bible teaches. Only God's elect are leading lives full of purpose and meaning and value, because the things we do for the sake of Christ, as Christ lives in us, and we follow his word, are said to be not in vain. In 1 Corinthians 15, verse 58, they are not in vain. They have a sense of purpose because our activity for the sake of Christ in this life carries into eternity future, and that which is eternal has weight and glory. It's not insignificant in any way, but it has tremendous meaning. But anyway, yes, everything in the world. Now, I don't know how God works everything in the world for the sake of his people. We do know that all things work together for good to those that love Christ. That's what we read in Romans 8, I think it's verse 29. And we can think in our own life, and it's true, everything in my life or in your life, if we are true elect children of God, all the bad things, all the hurt, all the misery, all the tears, all the sorrow, etc., as well as all the good, if we could find any, and all the happy days, and everything has worked together for good for us in our lives. But I think it is a bigger statement than that all things. Now, let's see if God narrows it down to just the life of the individual. It's an interesting thought. In Romans 8, it's actually verse 28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Yeah, I think that allows for a much wider understanding concerning all that is happening in the world. Because in order for God to work everything for our benefit, for our good, he does have to control surrounding circumstances, doesn't he? He has to orchestrate all kinds of events of people coming in our lives and going out of our lives, and cars narrowly missing us, and we narrowly missing catching a train or a plane, and sending us on a different pathway that the Lord has arranged. And it's amazing and yet true that even if we go back into the Old Testament time, when there were very few saints in the world, and in some places of the world, in the New Testament period as well, on a Pacific island, there were people that never heard the gospel, and their lives, as far as we know, never touched the lives of God's elect. And yet there must be some purpose that God used for them, for good for his people as well. I don't know what that would be. That's in the infinite mind of God, who knows all things. But there would be some aspect of what the Lord is saying, that all things work together for the welfare of his people. And that statement, that scripture, as well as many other statements in the Bible, should be a great source of comfort to us, because it indicates that God's eye is upon us, that he is watching us ever so carefully and protecting us and guiding us. And he has great concern with each and every one of his people regarding the things that happen to us on a daily basis, moment by moment basis. And so it indicates his care, his love, and the watchful eye of a father. And so we, just like a child, whose parents watch them closely when they're young, and make sure that everything works together for, don't we do that with our children? That everything we want to work for their good. We try our best to arrange things so that it will turn out that way. Of course, we don't have the ability. God does. He has perfect power and ability to make sure it does happen. But thank you for calling and sharing. And now let's go to the next person on the phone. Welcome to our program. Please go ahead with your call.
Hi, Chris. Good evening. May God bless you, Bible. I have a question and a comment. The more I meditate about the catching up and the final days, and I'm not sure if you can speak on this, but you can go straight to my question. It appears in 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 5. It appears that there's a sense of understanding that the rapture is going to take place for Elijah. And Elisha says, I know, hold your peace. Since May 21, 2011 and 1994 had a lot of mockery and a little bit of a buildup to see if it was going to happen or not, do you expect a little bit more of angst and disdain from the world as opposed to cruel mockings and laughter? Do you expect for the world to have some sort of awareness that as we proclaim more and more about the year 2033, we would have to live amongst our loved ones and have that kind of testing of awareness that the Lord could be, returning, with the world having that awareness as well, a bit of a buildup? That's my question.
Well, as far as, let's read the verse. 2 Kings 2, verse 5, and the sons of the prophets that were at Jericho came to Elisha and said unto him, knowest thou that Jehovah will take away thy master from thy head today? And he answered, yea, I know it, hold ye your peace. And that was repeated a few times in this passage. They had understanding, very curiously, that they had this understanding that it was time for Elijah to go up. And we can see how it might relate to the rapture, but Elijah was one person, and the sons of the prophets weren't raptured, and Elisha wasn't raptured. It was Elijah, and so when we think of going up and thy master be taken away from thy head today, we know when Christ went to the cross, and it was as though the church lost its head, and then he was resurrected, and in the and he showed himself alive for 40 days with proofs, and he had told them repeatedly that the Son of Man will be betrayed and crucified and then rise again on the third day. So they were told beforehand that Christ would rise up, and I haven't really completely locked that in, or where I believe that's what's being taught, but that seems to fit a little bit better than the idea of the rapture at the time of the end. But as far as what you're saying, there's a difference between what we're saying now, that there's much biblical evidence pointing to the year 2033 as the end of the world, and what we were proclaiming prior to May 21, 2011. Before May 21, 2011, the Lord had opened up his word to the point that we understood that was the day of judgment, and we realized there would be a prolonged judgment even back then, but we thought it would only be 5 months, and we had incorrect understanding concerning the nature of the judgment. We were thinking physical earthquake, and regarding what would happen to the people of God, that we would be taken out of the world before the judgment would come. So God has corrected us on those points, but still, what really disturbed the world was that insistent or incessant proclamation that May 21, 2011 was Judgment Day, exclamation point. And it was a certain sound of the trumpet as the word of God was declaring this truth, and God's people repeated it all over the world. They couldn't avoid it. They couldn't turn away from it. And so there was some anger or angry reactions towards it. Now, will there be angry reactions as we continue to go forward in time? I'm sure we're going to learn some more. Maybe we'll be able to say more definitively, yes, 2033 will be the end of the world. Absolutely. Maybe that'll come. I wouldn't say that now. Or maybe we'll even come up with the specific date in the year 2033, or God will reveal that, but he hasn't. And so I'm very comfortable just continuing to say there is much biblical evidence that the year 2033 will be the end of the world. And you know, that statement is a true statement at this time, and it'll be a true statement 5 years from now. And in the year 2033, it will be a true statement. Even if we go beyond 2033 and we reach 2034, and people will say, well, you said the world would end in 2033. No, what I'm saying is there is much biblical evidence that the world will end in the year 2033. And that's a fact. There is much biblical evidence the world will end in 2033. And if by chance it did not end, or by God's will, then it doesn't change the fact that there was much biblical evidence for the world ending in 2033. I've been very carefully framing the words in this way because it is a true statement throughout. It can remain a true statement throughout. Now, people won't recognize that. But you know, that's their problem. I'm just sharing and from time to time I get into it, the biblical evidence, and that it is pointing to the year 2033, much biblical evidence. And people may want to say, well, stop talking about it, and why do you have to talk about it? And I'm just sharing the biblical evidence. So I don't know what the world's reaction is going to be. I think God has done some preparation work in the world over these years since May 21, 2011, where people are shaken, they're troubled, they don't know what's happening. They make reference to the end of the world themselves, but always kind of in a lighthearted way. You know, and they'll say, well, we just went through this plague. What's the next plague? And so there's a deep down, there's a sense that God is displeased, that something is different, and so here comes the message from the Bible into their town, into their city. Why is the world so divided? And maybe down the road, more information in another track, perhaps called Much Biblical Evidence, the world will end in 2033. And they receive it. I think there'll be an interest in it. And we're not going to warn anyone. We're not trying to make sure everyone in the world hears. No, we're just going to do the best we can to share this information as far and wide as we can, and trust that God will reach the great multitude of elect and feed the sheep. They are ultimately who we are trying to get the word to, so it really is a different type of proclamation this time than it was prior to May 21, 2011. But thank you for calling and sharing. And let's now go to, do we have any other callers? I don't really see any. Yeah, I don't see anyone else on the phone tonight. So we're going to stop here. Well, yeah, there's a hand. I think it's the same caller. Please go ahead with your follow-up question or comment.
Oh, this is great. I love this. This is like a 2-for-1 deal. So Chris, thanks very much for that very detailed answer. The more I think about it, I get the response from fellow believers that I have a bit of like a lust to desire to see my fellow man see the wonderful details of the end. But based on what I see in the Bible with Noah's Ark, the Egyptians seeing the great signs and wonders, Sodom and Gomorrah witnessing the destruction, and Lot's wife seeing the burning of the city, Christ being resurrected, and the Sanhedrin being made known of what took place. It seems that every time God has done major judgments, there's been a declaration, not just for our sakes, but to the principalities and the powers. And I want to be very careful for those who may have loved ones who might not be elect, who have been born after May 21, 2011. And that's not my question, though. But could you just comment a little bit about the awareness leading up to Judgment Day? Do you think it's just going to be something all of a sudden, a snap of the finger, people living out their lives as drones, and there's just not God manifesting the wonderful display in the heavens? Will there be any kind of beautiful display amongst the unsaved as they see the twinkling of the eye, the changing? And you may not be able to answer that, but I just wanted to talk about that a little bit more, because God, he seems to act in ways where there are miraculous events visibly, physically, albeit short term, but God does put things on display. Do you think we can expect that in the end? And if you don't mind, Matthew 5:22 is the Bible verse. Matthew 5:22 is what my question was about. So if you don't want to answer that, thank you very much.
Okay, let's see what that is. Matthew 5:22. Well, I'll read that after commenting on what you said. We are witnessing a great many things happening in the world, and we just witnessed the shutting down of the whole world for at least 2 full years, and some places it's continuing longer. 2 full years in a 22-year tribulation or judgment period on the world. That's a significant amount of time, and now we're seeing upheaval, turmoil, division go from nation to nation across the earth. We're hearing reports. We already heard reports of the trouble in Canada with the truckers, and now in the Netherlands, the farmers are shutting down the whole country. We maybe don't hear as much about it, but in the Netherlands, they have the second highest, or they are the second most producers of agriculture. They're very big in the farming business, and because of political things, they're trying to curb the their growth as far as what they grow, the number of animals they have, and they're protesting, and they've basically shut down the country for some time now. I saw one video that showed their supermarkets, and they went into the produce section, which you would think would be fully stocked because they're a farming nation, and all they had there were a bag of onions. This is the turmoil that's going on in the Netherlands, and also there's similar protests developing in Poland and other nations, because many nations through world organizations have entered into these pacts, these agreements, that is causing them to cut back due to climate change, and it's causing great turmoil. Now, ultimately, God's behind all this, and it serves to trouble the inhabitants of the earth more and more. In the Netherlands, they have empty food shelves. And even in the USA, we go into a supermarket, we're starting to see many things sold out. I never saw that before in my life. For 55 years or plus, I'm 60 now, just the last couple of years that I've noticed that there's always been a superabundance of food in America. But now you go and maybe there's no chicken left, or I've noticed in buying dog food, you better get there early, or the shelves are going to be empty. And I'm just mentioning this because we read it first in the Bible. Read Revelation 18, when Babylon falls, and then they see the smoke of her burning, and all the merchants of the earth start to mourn. And so God is putting his finger on the things of the world, the abundance of things that the world has enjoyed, especially as we entered into the nearing the end, and now the time of the end. The world had overmuch, more in many places. Some places, of course, they didn't, but in the West, more than we needed. And now God is putting his finger upon it. He is troubling the inhabitants of the earth. In Europe, where there was the Brexit in England, and now more turmoil. They're driving out prime ministers left and right. The leadership in Italy just collapsed, and so on. It's going from nation to nation to nation. And this is what the Lord tells us in Jeremiah 25. We thought it would be a physical earthquake, as God says in Jeremiah 25, first he says in verse 29, "For lo, I begin to bring evil on the city which is called by my name, and should ye be utterly unpunished, ye shall not be unpunished. For I will call for a sword upon all the inhabitants of the earth, saith Jehovah of hosts. Therefore prophesy thou against them all these words, and say unto them, Jehovah shall roar from on high, and utter his voice from his holy habitation. He shall mightily roar upon his habitation. He shall give a shout as they that tread the grapes against all the inhabitants of the earth. A noise shall come even to the ends of the earth, for Jehovah hath a controversy with the nations. He will plead with all flesh. He will give them that are wicked to the sword, saith Jehovah. Thus saith Jehovah of hosts, behold, evil shall go forth from nation to nation, and a great whirlwind shall be raised up from the coast of the earth. And back prior to May 21, 2011, Mr. Camping spoke of this as the rolling earthquake. from nation to nation, as the timeline, as May 21 came for all the various nations, the earthquake would travel across the earth. Well, that is, the idea of an earthquake is true, but it's not a physical earthquake, a spiritual earthquake. And it is the evil of Judgment Day, the evil that the Lord had his people pray in the Lord's Prayer, as it was built into the Lord's Prayer, deliver us from evil. Well, the evil has come and now is going across the face of the earth, nation to nation, and the people are being troubled. So that's where we can see the outworking of what we're learning from the Bible as God reveals his righteous judgment, the revelation of his righteous judgment. We can see that the world has been turned upside down in a similar way that those in the churches, if we would go back to the time of the Great Tribulation, the 23 years, and at that time, God began revealing the end of the church age, get out of the church is apostate. And so that information was coming forth at the time that God was actively judging the church. And people could have heard that news, that report, and looked around, and some did, and they recognized it. They recognized it. They realized, well, yeah, the churches have really fallen. They're really gone astray and far away from truth. And some people I remember talking to back then, I just can't find a faithful church. I looked and looked and looked, and I gave up. I gave up. But these same people, this one guy who lived in the New England area, he told me for 10 years, he looked and couldn't find a faithful church, not a single one. And then finally, when the end of the church age information came out, and I talked to him again, and I said, well, here's the answer. Oh, no, I don't believe that. Can you imagine his own personal testimony is that he could not find a faithful church anywhere, but he would not give up the hope. Like a fairy tale, somewhere over the rainbow, somewhere out there, there is a reasonably faithful church, or there is a church that is still blessed by God. He wouldn't give that up. And so too, there will be more and more people of the world that have a recognition this is not the same world, especially us older people. I've already heard that from lots and lots of secular older people. People have nothing to do with the Bible. It's just not the same world, or it was a different world when we were young, wasn't it? You could let your children go out and run around and didn't have to worry about them, so a different world as far as crime, different world as far as the idea of gay marriage and transgender issues, unheard of, completely unheard of just a few decades ago. And now look at the world. Look at the drastic change in the world. And on top of all that, nothing is going right. Nothing is going right. If you want to leave your present country, if you want to leave America and find another country somewhere where things are going right, which country would you go to? Which country would you flee to? Where are you going to turn? Europe used to be a destination place. Well, let's go over and live in beautiful Europe. Well, now it's a mess. It's a mess everywhere you look. It's a mess. And you want to go to South America? Everyone in South America wants to come to America. well, not everyone, that's a overstatement, but seemingly many people there want to come here, want to go to Canada. Well, they're having great trouble. Where are you going to go? Where in this world can you escape the wrath of God? And that's what God said in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, that Christ comes as a thief in the night. Remember that verse in 1 Thessalonians 5. Verse 2, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. There is no escape, nowhere to go, no place to flee, because the whole world, all the inhabitants of the earth are under the wrath of God. God is actively targeting humanity, the rebels that have dared to rebel against him and shake their puny little fists at him day after day after day, as they went their own way and gave him no regard and little, if any, thought. And now God has come to get his vengeance. These are the days of vengeance where God is pouring out his wrath, and there will be none to escape except for the elect of God, as we read in Luke 21. In Luke 21, verse 34, and take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life, and so that day come upon you unawares. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. God's elect are counted worthy to escape, but none others are. None shall escape. And so here we are. This is the situation, and it is unpleasant, and it's not going to get better. It will be a downward spiral. We can look to the church, which was a spiritual judgment, for information on that as well. Did the church start improving at any point during the 23 years, or did it get worse and worse as far as their blindness and their going away from the true gospel? It only got worse. And so too, you see, the church was entrusted with the Bible, and they became blind to it. The people of the world have been entrusted with the law written upon their heart. And now these basic moral laws that God encoded and placed within human nature are the people of the world are becoming blind to it. That's the only way the things that are happening could possibly happen, where they're insisting that men are women and women are men, and all these other things. It is blatant blindness and ignorance of understanding from the heart, and it is a losing of that basic morality that God implanted in his creatures, created in his image. And of course, God is doing it. He's behind it all. But we, the people of God, if anyone out there was outside the church, then maybe you can have some hope. There's only a little hope, and that is that God might have saved you before May 21, 2011. And so approach God that way and say, having had mercy, have mercy upon me, O God. And could it be that I might have been counted worthy to escape this wrath because of Christ, because of what he did for me? It's my only hope, that even though maybe the last 10 years I've been living a sinful life and living like everybody else in the world, my only hope is that maybe God saved me before he shut the door. And so that would be the way to approach God. But thank you for calling and sharing. I would like to thank everyone for joining us tonight and sharing your comments and questions, and especially the Bible verses we had a chance to read and consider. But we have come to the end of our time tonight. Lord willing, we'll have another E-Bible Fellowship Open Forum program on Sunday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. But for now, may you have a good night, and may the Lord's perfect will be done.
Thanks again for joining us for E-Bible Fellowship's live open forum program. We invite you to call us with your Bible questions Monday through Friday evenings beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for being with us. Have a blessed evening.